Hi there, let's talk sports fans. Excited to be joined by Leicester YouTuber Chris. Thanks for joining me for today's show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the channel.
And that I've been excited to talk to you. I always like to, although I'm a West Ham fan, I like to have someone. It's my aim to have someone from every club because it's always nice. You don't want someone just from your own perspective. It's always nice to get outside voices on to talk A, football, and B, about each other's team.
Oh, I agree. I have sort of an opposition view show on my channel as well, and um, it's hurting a little bit after the result. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the game in a minute, but I'm going to be honest. As I said to you, because I did answer the questionnaire for you. It's funny the correspondent fixture was. It shocked me, but it was one of West Ham's better performances. But it's interesting that two of their better performances have come against Leicester, who's had such a great season.
We must write you, but I think it's been a difficult season all round with everything that's going on with the COVID situation. Um, you normally look at the league and you say, right, we're going to win that game, we could draw that game, but you can't tell. One week we'll go and beat Man City 5-2, the next week we'll go and lose to Fulham, who were bottom at the time. I think when we met you in the first game, certainly for me as a fan, I underestimated, I think, what West Ham were doing or going to be doing this season. It was quite early in the season, and your last couple of seasons, you sort of put it bluntly, you've been in relegation fight towards the bottom, and we didn't expect, you know, people are saying that we're the surprise package for the season. I think you are. I don't think you expected to be where you are. And at the time, it's like, oh God, we lost to Fulham one week, then we lost to you the next week. It's like, what are we doing? But looking back and looking where you are now, it obviously nobody likes defeat, but we lost to a very good team. And West Ham this year are a very good team.
Yeah, I mean, I view Leicester and West Ham quite similar in they're both well coached. They don't have the most resources, but what they do have is a good togetherness. They do have a couple of very good footballers, both sides do, but they sort of need to play up to their levels to compete against some of the sides what are up there with them. And if they just drop up off even 5%, then they haven't got the talent pool to sort of pull the result out, if that makes sense.
It does, and I get what you mean. The Premier League these days is all about squad size. You look at Man City, and if they put a B side out, it's probably better than West Ham or Leicester's A side. That said, and I've never ever liked the fact that teams sort of and team managers will always sit there and blame injuries. We've got a big injury list. The medical room, got three quarters of the team in. But this season, every team has struggled with injury, and I think that's because of the fact that the situation we're in now, we only had a very, very short off season. Players didn't get that chance to rest and recharge. And you look at at one point, we were top of the league, but that was the league for injuries. And then Liverpool were, and like I said, not just Leicester, every team has suffered the same. So West Ham have. It's normal when you look on the injury chart that teams have got 4 or 5 players out, and they're key players, and that can affect how you perform. We were very lucky that we had this at the start of the season, and we had players that we brought in. I mean, we brought Christian Fuchs in. Now, he's probably not played 3 games in the last 3 seasons. At the start of the season, he played 7, 8 games on the trot. Luke Thomas, we'd never heard of him. He's coming at left back from the youth team. He's scoring goals in the Europa League. So we were quite lucky in that respect that we've been able to call upon the squad, and when they've been called upon, they've stood up and been counted.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, and now seems like the perfect time to mention it. What I will say for both Leicester and West Ham, you've got big sides like Liverpool complaining match after match about injuries, but no one's had a longer list of injuries than Leicester if you add up all their injuries. And also, although West Ham had loads of injuries, currently they've got Antonio, their centre forward, Declan Rice, their captain, and um, star central defensive midfielder, and Ogbonna, their best central defender else. That's the spine of the team, but you don't hear Rodgers or Moyes moaning about it, but then Klopp game after game moans. And I understand it's hard with injuries. One, you get on with it, and two, at the end of the day, some of it's obviously Liverpool wants to be in the Champions League, and they, unlike the likes of Leicester, who don't have so much money, did have the option of signing players, but they've got lucky over the last 2 or 3 seasons that they've had a pool of 13 players and not really any injuries, but now they have. And I said at the beginning of the season they was chancing it a bit, but you can't make the decision not to sign players and then complain because um you just almost it's next man up. And that's what I was trying to say in the article I wrote for you. One thing what I will say about Rodgers is he not only puts the youngsters in and trusts them, he also puts them in a position to succeed. And Klopp hasn't really done that. I mean, um, he seemed hesitant all year to put Nat Phillips in. Now I've watched him twice against West Ham, and I don't understand the problem. He seems like quite a good young defender. He's not a modern central defender, but he's had quite good games against West Ham, and I don't understand why he'd play Henderson rather than Nat Phillips. And he could take a leaf out of Rodgers' book and just empower a youngster by trusting him rather than show that he has no faith in him. And I've got a lot of respect for Rodgers, what he's done when there has been injuries. He hasn't been afraid to trust the youngster, and that's what the youngsters in the squad for. There's no point having them in the squad if you're not going to trust them.
No, no, there's not. And like I said, we didn't buy anybody in the January window, and as fans, we are screaming, saying like we need backup for this position. At one point we had 4 out of our 5, sorry, 3 out of our 4 main defenders were all on the injury table at the start of the season. But we're quite well off. We're not poor. There was a thing in the paper the other day. We're the 19th richest club in the world now with our owners. We're not in the Man City bracket by any means, but we're certainly not in the Rochdale Scunthorpe sort of bracket. But something about these managers at the level of Liverpool, Man City, the big clubs, where the managers almost have to justify why they lost. I mean, you lose a game, you lose a game. It happens. It's sport. You've got a winner, you've got a loser, and I don't know what it is with these big clubs that when they've got these youngsters, Man City, Foden, yes, he's a brilliant, and he's now getting game time. But how long has it taken? Because they're a club with all these big names, the little clubs, the young players aren't getting that chance. And when they do break in, and I'm a great believer that with the players in the squad, even if he's not a regular, if he's playing well, that's his spot until he has a bad game. You don't just drop him because the other player's fit again if he's playing well. So it does. You look at Chelsea. Let's take. I mean, Chelsea have got more players out on loan than they have got in their squad, and most of them are young players. And you think why? Because when it comes to needing a left back, let's say, they're not going to go and get somebody from the youth squad. They're going to go and buy the likes of Ben Chilwell from Leicester. So I don't get why these big clubs. It is all about money. It is all about having star names. But football is going to come out of this COVID problem a completely different perspective in the fact of the money's not going to be there. Yes, Man City, let's be honest with you, they're the richest club in the world. The owners are dripping money. But for the rest of us, even with where we've got big owners, I say we've got billionaire owners, but they're in the travel business. They own duty free shops. Well, the travel business is decimated at the moment. So nobody's travelling, nobody's stopping in their hotels, nobody's buying the duty free because nobody's at airports really. So we can't rely on going out and buying for us. Yuri Tillmans is our most expensive signing at 40 million. We can't go and do that. We have to rely on the youth coming through, and that's why when you look at Leicester, we've got this amazing new training ground. That's cost 100 odd million. That that's almost the Ben Chilwell and money's gone all into that, and Harry Maguire's money as well. But that will mean that we might not have to spend as much money in the future because we'll bring these youngsters through. And we'll sit there as fans and go, "Oh, why didn't we play this player? Why didn't we buy that player?" If you've got youngsters coming through, financially as a club, it's a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Leicester's new training ground does get mentioned a fair bit in West Ham circles because if you look at West Ham's training facilities, there's clubs in League One what has a better facilities than us, and we sort of look at Leicester as the model we want West Ham to follow. But yes, they have had a good season, but the owners are quite a divisive figure in um they have for many years mismanaged. I mean, even if you look at our squad, we technically ain't got a striker in our squad because Antonio, whereas he's doing a good job playing up front, he's actually a winger slash attacking midfield, and there's no one behind. They got rid of Hilaire, which wasn't a good fit, but the West Ham fans are quite against the owners, and everyone looks at that West Ham's up there. They are, but at the same time, in January, West Ham fans was crying out for them to bring in two players and a striker and some sort of depth in defensive midfield. And by that, I don't mean go out there and spend 40 million. We said if you've got someone just in loan in those two positions, and you saw Fulham go out there and add the striker on loan, so that it was possible. And way we look at as now they're sort of paying the price because Antonio's out, Rice is out, and we just one thing you can say about Leicester is that they're a very well-run club. I know they didn't go out and spend in January, but they do have the depth because of these young players. But there's not too many young players around the West Ham squad. What either Moyes don't have trust in or just opts not to play them. There, most games this year, we have three defenders and three goalkeepers on our bench, and that is a problem when you need to make substitutes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we played you at the weekend, because of what had happened, when we look, we probably had the youngest bench we've ever put out in our history because we couldn't pick certain players and injuries, and Soyuncu was still in Turkey because he tested positive after the international. It is ridiculous, but Leicester have always had a good youth policy. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Gary Lineker came through, and although we've always produced good youngsters that have gone on to things, never before, because of the way Leicester was run, we took advantage. We always took a create these players for other teams to come in and buy. Hopefully, things are changing on that now. But these youngsters, I mean, people before Rodgers, and Rodgers is such a perfect fit for Leicester, and because he's into the youth, he's always promoted the youth, and you criticise sometimes, clubs sack a manager and they haven't got anybody in mind, and it takes them 3 or 4 weeks. They knew they wanted Rodgers when they got rid of 12. They knew what he was about. I know from, and I've been watching things on, YouTube and reading. Rodgers wanted to come back to the Premier League. He was looking for the right job, and he looked at Leicester and thought, yeah, this fits what I'm looking at. They've got this youngsters, they've got this training ground, starting project starting, obviously now completed. And he was the most amazing fit. I've never known a manager come in when anybody's gone, yeah, I'm glad we've got him, literally as one. But I've got to say, as fans as well, we can get things, we can look at things sometimes and get things wrong. I mean, Claude Quell came in and we had Claudio Ranieri, who did the miracle, took us to the league. And it was funny that year we won the league, we had the least injuries, I think, of any team in the Premier League. So it does help, obviously. After that, we struggled because all our expectations went so high, and we went through managers. Every 18 months, there's a new manager coming in the door. Claude Quell had been at Southampton, and he completely underwhelmed us as fans when we signed him. But now he's gone, and you look back at what he was trying to do, and we as fans, we look and we just see the results and we judge the managers by that. He he did start in a way, not start, but he certainly laid the ground seeds for what Brendan is now reaping. Because he did start. He had faith in you. His plan was to sort of do the youth. So in a way, we've got to kind of thank him, although we were glad to see him go. We've got to kind of thank him for what Brendan's done. But Brendan, yeah, he's a great believer in youth. And let's be honest with you, we had Ben Chilwell, who came through the youth system. So it didn't cost us anything to bring in. We sold him to Chelsea for 50 million, and we've replaced him with James Justin, who, although he wasn't one of ours, he came from Luton. He came for something like 12 million, something like that. I'm probably wrong on that, but it was a bargain. And Leicester's transfer policy, not only do we say do we have good, you know, youth system there, we buy cheap and good, and Brendan's just adding to that. He's bought Fafana in. My God, what a bargain he is. And it's a perfect fit almost.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I do look at David Moyes. He isn't necessarily the perfect manager, but he's the perfect manager for these owners, because one thing Bob will say is he's quite controlling in his transfer activities, and he's hesitant. And now we may miss out on some players, but one thing what you do know, pretty much any player he does sign, he won't miss on, because of he's so cautious that he hates the thought of wasting the money. So at the moment, I say on a few of my shows, it's almost like he's counteracting. He won't let the owners meddle, because they love meddling and signing players no one's heard of and missing. And if the owners ain't going to give too much money, I would trust David Moyes to pick that player more than most managers. So um, I do, and I can see what he's trying to build. Although he is hesitant, he's trying to upgrade the scouting network. He's looking at players from lower leagues to bring into our sort of under 23 setup and build that backbone. The problem is that's all going to take time to build this depth. But I'm going to be honest, I was hesitant when Moyes was appointed, not because I didn't like him, because I loved him at Everton. I thought he did a great job. I just weren't sure if the game had sort of passed him by. He had sort of bombed out of a few clubs, but never have I been so happy to be wrong. But I'm not going to sit here and say I was ecstatic about his appointment because um, obviously I like to be transparent, but at the same time, isn't it nice to be wrong? It's better to be wrong like this than be right, but your club do badly, is my opinion.
When you went back into Moyes, I I don't necessarily dislike Moyes. He just doesn't fill me with any excitement or passion or anything like that. And when he was at Everton, he did okay. He kept them, and Everton are sort of not a small club, but he never actually won anything at Everton. He
No,
came from Preston, went to Everton. You know, some seasons he'd be up there challenging for Europe. The next season would be sort of 12, 13. They were just a mid-table team. He never actually achieved anything. But that said, he was on a tight budget there, and he did keep them. He never went out of the Premier League. He was shat upon from a very great height at Man United because he wasn't given the time. And I think if you look at managers that have followed him, he um, it's only now Ollie's come along that they're doing reasonably well. You got Van Gaal, who's a World Cup winner. He couldn't do anything for Man United, or he won them an FA Cup, I grant you. But and then Moyes went abroad, and that's always difficult. You've got to be a very special type of English manager to be able to succeed abroad. I thought West Ham were really bad when he kept you up that season, and then you got rid of him. And I'm thinking that's a bit of a kick in the teeth. So I was kind of surprised when he went back. And like I say, I wasn't expecting anything this season of you. I thought you'd be back down there, sort of, with the Southamptons and the Brightons and the Burnleys and fighting for your life. And I've got to take my hats off to him. He's completely um, turned things round. Sometimes you need a bit of luck, and Quell had it. Quell, before Quell was sacked, he got a bit of a stay of execution because he went and brought Harvey Barnes back. He was on loan at West Brom, and he was young and he hadn't really played much Premier League, but he was setting the world alight at West Brom. Quell brought him back, put him in the team, and it changed our season. And Moyes took a gamble on Jesse Lingard. And I know we were linked with him, and all our fans going, "But yeah, we don't want him, and he's useless, and he's past it, and he's lazy." And blah, blah. I'll tell you what, I'd take him now. That was a great thing. And whatever they say about David Moyes, he has got a really good tune out of Jesse Lingard, and I think he's probably is almost the main difference for your season.
yeah, I agree. And I'm going to be honest, I, as a West Ham fan, didn't like what they did to Moyes. They gave him their word that he would have a job if he kept them up. And let's be honest, they stabbed him in the back. But also, I think it says a lot about Moyes that he swallowed his pride and come back here a second time because a lot of men wouldn't have the ego to do that. They would say no, but I actually think that's done him a favour because the players looked at him and said, hang on, he swallowed his pride, come back, and he's coming back to save us again. And I think that's the sort of man a player can get behind and play for. And to be honest with you, that's the sort of man I want at my club. There's no sort of humility. He could have sort of said, "No, I'm not coming back," but I respect him as a man for that. As you said, he's not the perfect manager because there's been times this year he's been hesitant against the bigger sides. He's played it safe, and that sort of a little bit what's held him back even when he was at Everton. But at the same time, you've got to take the good with the bad. He's got a lot of credit in the bank, so I will take that. And I just have to say, I do like that he did come back. And I think if he didn't, West Ham was a Ghana last year.
You always say, don't you, that you should never go back. You should never have sort of managers back. We did with Nigel Pearson. We had him. We got new owners in. We got rid of him. Got a manager in. It was rubbish. We tried the Sven Goran Eriksson experiment. Didn't work. Got Pearson back. We wouldn't have won the league if it hadn't been for what Pearson had done and put in place. And I think sometimes we shouldn't feel sorry for managers when they get sacked because, what are the business? You get sacked for doing a bad job. Right, sometimes the owners are idiots and sacked for wrong reasons. But generally speaking, managers are sacked because they haven't performed as the owners wanted. And it's fine, it's their club. But what are the jobs? You get sacked, get a huge payoff. A lot of these managers are living off their redundancy money that they get when they're sacked. And then you do a bad job at Club A, get a big payoff. 6 months later, you walk into Club B and do exactly the same. You look at the likes of Chelsea. How much money have they gone through in compensation for managers that are being sacked? But I tell you what, with David Moyes, and I say I quote the Nigel Pearson example as well. When a club goes back and wants the manager to come back, I mean, as it happened, Nigel Pearson walked, but David Moyes would have been able to demand almost write his own contract, if you like, because whose need was greater? Because David Moyes, I don't say he's desperate for a job, but yes, it's a Premier League club, etc. But West Ham, went to him and said, "Will you come back?" And he will have literally written his own contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think the contract, what they gave him wasn't high, but he still ain't got a contract for next year there. Um, I think there is some interest from Celtic and David Moyes. There's a bit more steel to him than people realise, and I think the offers on the table, according to sources in the club, but he's using. Let's be honest, he's got credit in the bank, so he's
Yeah.
going to say at the end of the season, right, I need a striker and I need a midfielder. If you don't get me those two things, I'm off the Celtic. Now, I don't think he would. I know he is a Celtic man, but he wants to be in the Premier League, but he just needs to make them think that he'll go because if the owners have got a bad relationship with the fans now after the season Moyes has just had, can you imagine the uproar if he walks?
Yes.
That they're sort of almost got to give him not only just the contract he wants, but also the budget he wants. So it's going to be interesting. But I like that he's sort of got them over a barrel because that's what you want in your manager.
It is, and if he wasn't doing well, he wouldn't have them over a barrel. So it's kind of a win-win situation. And I mean, I think apart from Man United and Newcastle, I think you're probably third there with the owners that the fans most hate. There's not a lot of love lost between West Ham fans and West Ham owners, is there?
No, there's not. And case in point, I mean, even when things were going well and things were trying down this season, they used the COVID things to add people, directors to the um, list, even in full lockdown. And it wasn't a business decision. It was so their friends could come and watch
Right.
when the fans couldn't, which I understand it's their club. Obviously, they want their friends to come, but it was just there's people out there not being able to work, even when things are going well. And the fans are tried to down. They do something to make it bad for themselves, and that sort of sums them up. And I think that's what Moyes is trying to do. He's trying to get in there, get them to get out of their own way, because every time something goes well, they do something stupid like getting in a row with Robert Snodgrass, and just there's always something. They appeared to have been in their life successful businessmen, but
Mm.
West Ham fans always say, um, we don't know how, because there seems to be a lack of common sense. And like I'm not as against them as some fans. I'm fairly neutral. They are doing a bad job, but you have to be careful when you want the club sold, because you could get someone far worse. They're not the
Oh
best.
God, look at Portsmouth.
Yeah.
They were saved by Milan Mandrić. He sold to Gaydar for some Russian that was so we say not completely honest, and they're now sort of in the fourth tier or third tier. It can go totally wrong. And when Mandrić sold Leicester to Thai businessmen coming from Thailand, who are they? What do they know about football? But and I think we've probably got the best owners anywhere in the United Kingdom. What I must admit, I'm going to ask this question of you, if you don't mind, about your owners. Why, as a fan base, and you kind of answered it a little bit, but we look at Newcastle, let's say, and we look at Mike Ashley. He doesn't put money in, and I get why they get annoyed. Man United, I get that a little bit because they took this profitable club and they've basically hauled it out. They've got so much debt now at Man United, and they were a profitable club before. I'm not saying they're not profitable, but they didn't have that amount of debt. Now West Ham, they've come in. They never seem to be short of providing the manager, whoever the manager happens to be, with money to buy players. At some time, I think you had more strikers than the rest of the team put together. In the time that they've been there, the amount that they bought, they're taking to a brand new stadium, which is I know it wasn't purpose built, but they've adapted it. It's an amazing stadium, in modern day terms. It doesn't appear on the outside looking in that they do an awful lot wrong.
Okay. Well, it's a tricky situation. Personally speaking, I'm not with a lot of fans. The stadium move is a very, shall we say, controversial situation. I was okay with it, but the problem is to get them to agree to that move. They said, we guarantee you, if you move, we'll be in Europe every year. We'll within 4 years be in Europe, and we'll be signing. We won't be having our younger players picked off year after year. We will be signing players from European giants. Now, I never bought that, but they said it, and rather than that, year after year, um, they still do sell some of the youngsters. You had Garner leave this year. Now, actually, I think that's worked out because he hasn't had the best season, and I always looked at as I doubt if he could do it in the top division. But you can't say you're not going to sell the young talent and then still do it. That's a big thing for the West Ham fans. They want young talent in their side, and they promised to push the youth through, but year after year they've got rid of the resources to the academy, and that don't make the headlines. But West Ham fans just hate it, and then they'll leak certain things to their mates at Talk Sport to sort of try and give the appearance they're doing a lot, but I do think they do give a fair amount of money, not the last couple of years, but the problem is it's how they spend it. And even something like the Sebastian Haller signing, which was a lot of money, but the problem is they signed him without any idea how to use him, and they didn't have the players around him. So yes, they should have signed a striker, but maybe possibly not him. And the problem is they had a deal for another striker who probably would have fit the system better. But when the fee was agreed at the last minute, a fax come out and they was haggling over how the repayments happened, and that deal fell through. And then they panicked and went for Haller for more than what they was paying. And that's sort of an example. I mean, they have a habit of signing players from um their one of their mates who's an agent, and no matter what their talent is, they'll sign from him. So it's I don't hate them like a lot of fans do. They like absolutely hate them. I'm a bit critical of them, but I can see it from both sides. But the appearance of how they run the club is from the outside, if you look at how they're doing, is a bit different. I mean, the last couple of years, I think Moyes has helped counteract them a little bit. But the problem is, they sacked him, got Pellegrini in, gave him all this money. If they didn't double cross Moyes and gave Moyes the money, I think there is an argument, would they be in a better place? Possibly. So I can understand from the outside why people say why they so hated, but it's not really one thing. It's just these little things they do. Another thing what they have a habit of doing is um they move money around, give the appearance they're giving money, but then they do it as a loan. They say they lend them the club money, but then documents come out and the interest rates astronomical. I mean, last year they said they had made, I think they said 60 million available, and they did the deal for Ben Rama to come in and said there was a hiccup and will with an obligation to buy. But now they're saying, oh, there might not be much money available this summer because we're paying for Ben Rama, but the money can't come out of last year's budget and this year's budget. What one is it? So if you had 60 million available last year and you're making the Ben Rama money available, why is there no money this year? Do you know what I mean? It's sort
Yeah.
of one or the other. So um, I'm not as against them as some fans, because a lot of fans say, well, there's got to be someone like Red Bull out there to buy them. Well, if you don't like the stadium move, would you want them to, if Red Bull took over them, they'd be called Red Bull London or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously, even if, and that is pie in the sky stuff, would that happen? Probably not, but even if it did, well, if you don't want to move stadiums because of your identity, would you want your names to be changed? So you've got to be careful. As we've said, there's a lot of charlatans out there. So I think they are not great owners, but you could do worse. But I'm not going to sit here and say they're doing a great job. I'm more confident in them with Moyes there, but if they got a man what wasn't as strong, sort of, I would be more concerned at them running
Yeah.
my club.
Well, like I say, we can't complain because we happen to absolutely love our owners. So,
I like to think I'm sort of fair. I think my opinion is, and I don't know if it comes across, I'm sort of fair to both sides. Obviously, a lot of fans you could have on here, and they would be far more against the owners. But I'm not going, like, another big issue for them is 18 months ago we had four strikers on 100 grand a week, and these contracts didn't get renewed. I'm not saying that's not the right decision, but now we've got no strikers. So obviously you can't have a Premiership club and have no strikers. So
no.
um, whereas they didn't work out. Hernandez was a good striker, but they didn't know how to use him, and it didn't work out. Carroll was injury prone. Perez was just a miss both for Arsenal and us. but at the same time, you can't get rid of them and then not replace them. So, you know, there is reasons to criticize them, but I'm not going. It could be worse, but it could be better. I mean, the irony is they spent 40 million on Hilaire. They had Antonio here, so what they could have done is not buy Hilaire, put Antonio up there, invest the money in someone younger to play as a backup to Antonio, and also get a centre midfielder. So the irony is their move sort of set them back.
Well, as well, you were obviously after a couple of players that we were after. Tarkovsky from Burnley. Neither of us got him as it happened, but you were
No,
after Fofana as well, weren't you?
yeah, I mean, I think personally speaking, and this is something they do. They were after him, but I think a lot of it was posturing. They knew Leicester would always get him, and they was bidding to give it the appearance of they's doing something. If that makes sense, that's a
Yeah,
favourite move of our owners. I mean, Tarkovsky, I always said he's a good defender, but I'm not paying that much money.
no,
That's just my opinion. Just to finish up, one last question I've got for
yeah.
you is we've talked about the season. What interested you in being a Leicester YouTuber? Was it just to talk about Leicester, or was you more interested in the media side of it?
I I I started Leicester Slide Die as a group because we've got a website. We go to leicesterslidedie.com. We've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, Instagram. So YouTube, in a way, was kind of a natural progression. Um, it came more out of lockdown, if you like, because of not having a job because I'm off long term ill at the moment. So I wasn't getting out because none of us could get out because we were all sort of say in national lockdown. And I'd done the way I started Leicester Till I Die itself was by actually writing for another blog page called Silver Fox. Then he wanted to stop doing that, so he offered it to me. So I took over Silver Fox, eventually gave it my own identity of Leicester Till I Die, and then developed that blog into a website, a Facebook, a Twitter, etc. And it's the same a bit with the YouTube that I did shows for other Leicester Till I Die channels, not regular, but I'd go on occasionally as a guest and do it. And again, I thought, hang on a second, I could be doing this for myself. And like I say, if it wasn't for this, I think I'd be climbing the walls at the moment because it's kind of taken over my life because I kind of do. I was doing some nights, literally, I was doing 6 nights out of 7 when we were in Europe. Shows it was only sort of one night off a week, but everybody loves talking about the football club, and you've seen I can talk and talk and talk about Leicester, and it was just that. It was just a case of when I look where we've come within almost the season, right? We're not the biggest, we don't subscriber wise, we're the lot, bigger ones out there than us for Leicester City. Our podcast is more like this really, where there's me and I've got 3 or 4 colleagues that will do different shows with me, and it's kind of that interviewing style of show, and people, will then ask questions of us as we're talking about a particular topic, rather than anybody joins in and says something about something. But no, I can say literally, it was the lockdown.
Yeah, it's a bit similar with me. I mean, I've had sort of the itch to do it for a while, but with the lockdown and it's something to do because I'm housebound anyway, but obviously with the lockdown, um, it hasn't changed in obviously I couldn't go out anyway, but there's less going on. So obviously the channel gives that. and I thought, why not create it and sort of build a community. I mean, I did consider doing just West Ham, but West Ham is a very oversaturated space
Mm.
on YouTube and as a podcast. And I think it's interesting talking about lots of different sports and you get to speak to lots of different people. So that's why I opted for more of a general sports channel. And it's funny, even though I'm based in England, probably my biggest listener base is America for some reason.
I've seen a couple of these shows, and it is interesting that you talk about different sports. The problem for me is I don't know anything about different sports, so I couldn't talk on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting a variety, so that's really it. And really I think people respond to a variety as well. And
Yeah,
like I say, West Ham is one of my bigger loves, but there's just so many on there. I'm actually quite lucky. Quite a few West Ham you bigger West Ham users do come on and help me out. But
yeah,
obviously it's just a hard space to get into.
yeah.
Um,
I think I think to be honest with you, the fan channels on YouTube. I mean, we all know Arsenal Fan TV, and how that I think that sort of kicked off, and we thinking, oh, we could do this, and lockdown, everybody suddenly become a you know a YouTube blogger because it's something to do, and it just stopped us all going mad.
yeah, I think it is that. I mean, it's quite interesting. I've had a couple of American sports radio people on my show, and then they asked me to come on their call-in show, which I guess that's a good sign. They know what I'm talking about, that they
Yeah.
want me to come on. But it's interesting, and I think in this day and age, people prefer fan channels and just some media outlet maybe not knowing what they talk about. I think it's sort of starting to what people want. In that sort of way, before we finish up, would you like to give everyone a shout out to your channel, your website, and why they should check it out?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. YouTube is Leicester Till I Die TV. Please subscribe to that. Like I said, we've only been going for a season and we are sort of slowly building that up. The website is leicestertillidie.com. Facebook is the same, Leicester Till I Die. Twitter's a little bit different. It's at Leicester TID, just the way that it worked out. And if you want to listen on sort of Spotify, all our shows go on to podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and that's all Leicester Till I Die, Apple iTunes as well. So if you search Leicester Till I Die, at some point we'll be there.
Yeah, and I will put a link in the description below, and I will tweet out all the links when the episode goes up.
I will for your channel as well, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other than that, all what remains is for me to thank you for coming on, and I'd love to have you on sometime in the future.
We will do it again. I'll try not to let you down next time. Maybe when we play each other next season. Good luck. Good luck for the rest of the season as West Ham. I just hope wherever you finish, it's one place below Leicester.
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't really talk about that, but I would like Champions League, but I'd be happy with Europa. My personal feeling is we might just fall just below, but the
Yeah,
dream is for both of us to end up in the Champions League. And
it would be nice and give those big clubs a bloody nose, eh?
yeah, I agree. And I think that's the perfect place to end. But I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and until next time, let's talk sport, fans.